I'm going, I got to proof myself up.
Bring in the ambiance.
There we go.
Hello, hello. For those of you joining us, this is Her Talk Show. My name is Sabrina Victoria. I am here with Nicole Harvick, and we are talking all about forgiveness. What a great topic. I feel like we all need this spiel in like one area, like one person. Just some forgiveness. So get comfortable. We're going to explore some things. Offer insights, inspiration to fuel your personal and our professional growth, obviously. I'm super excited about this. Let's jump in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
All right, if you're listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can show you some love in the comments. We are here every day delving deep into the realms of health, wealth, and leadership with some of the most brilliant women globally. So make sure you subscribe. We have interviewed over 600 women, and today we are adding another one to the list. We have Nicole Harvick, who is known as the forgiveness expert and quantum energy healer. Oh, I just love that. Her mission is to help as many people as possible to understand that forgiveness is for you. By utilizing forgiveness and releasing old trauma, you can walk your path with love and emotional freedom. This frees you to understand your true essence of being. Welcome, Nicole.
I like that. Thank you so much for that beautiful intro. And yes, I am the forgiveness expert because I had to learn how to forgive.
Ooh, oh, she's diving right into the tea. You have to share. You opened up. You have to share. Tell us a story.
You know, it started with a divorce when I found out, I'm just going to be very blunt, my husband was cheating on me. And the way, and this is like 10 years ago, 2013. So actually going on 11 years ago. But, you know, the way I found out was just, it was horrifying because my daughter, who was in 6th grade at the time, her iPod Touch was synced to her dad's cell phone. And I lived in Arizona and we had year-round school. So it was a time when my daughter was out there with her grandparents, which were his parents. And I'm getting ready to go. I was doing an auction because I had an online boutique. She calls me up and she whispers, she goes, Mom, she goes, I think Dad has a girlfriend. And I said, babe, why would you think that? She goes, well, she goes, I'm getting some texts and I'm getting a lot of pictures. And you know what? I was busy. I didn't even think about what I was saying, but I'm like, oh, well, send them to me and I'll take a look. So literally, like within a couple minutes, those pictures start rolling in, those texts, those sex, the videos, you name it, I got them. And it was so bizarre because here's my little 11-year-old 1,000 miles away from me. I'm getting these and I'm just like, I'm dumbfounded. I'm just dumbfounded, you know, and it's so weird because I'd had these like feelings in my stomach, like something's up, this is not right, I caught this, but I had like no tangible proof. And sometimes when the universe wants something to happen, they push you to your knees to get it done. And that's what that was. I got pushed, Sabrina. I got pushed hard.
So we're talking about forgiveness. This seems like this was probably a little bit of a journey for you.
I would call it a journey. I would call it my awakening. And, you know, when that happened and as we progressed through it, I knew I was going to need help. So, you know, I was going to divorced women's group. I was going to counselors. I was going to psychologists. And it was really interesting because all I seemed to ever do was just talk about it. And I wasn't getting anywhere with that. I was just kind of reliving it and the pain. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I should try to figure out how to heal myself. So, you know what? If I put all my certificates on the wall, I would not need wallpaper. I mean, it's just like I learned everything, you know, from cellular memory retrieval, tuning forks, singing bowls, Reiki master, you name it. I learned it and I was using it on myself. And I thought, you know, this is great. I feel better, but man, what is going on? And what I came to figure out was what I was missing in my life was forgiveness. And so when I figured that out, I started. My first thought was, why should I forgive him? Look what he did.
Yeah.
But you know, I was to a point where my hair was falling out. And I was starting to scratch my skin until it bled. You know, I was at a point where I was getting really, really sick. And what I did is I found a method that I used, and it's called Ho'oponopono. And I was actually gifted that on a trip to the Big Island. And I kept thinking, you know, this is free. This isn't going to work. I can't imagine all the money I paid for all this. And that would work. And so I talked to my guides a lot. They talked to me, and what I heard was try it. Just try. And so what I would do is every night before I'd go to bed, I would just go into a meditation. And what I would do is I would envision like an old movie theater. Remember the curtains would come back?
Yeah.
And I would pull my ex on stage, and I would just say, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And thank you. And it was for both of us because, you know, there's two in a marriage. I didn't do anything like he did, but, you know, I started forgiving him, but then I started forgiving myself because sometimes, even though you haven't done anything as egregious as he did, you know, there's two there. And then I was mad at myself because I stayed so long in that marriage. I'm like, what were you thinking? You have two girls, they're watching you. And what dawned on me is I had done everything that I knew how to do with the information I had at that time. At that point in time, I did what I knew. And so I just forgave myself. I didn't know to leave. I was scared to leave. I had two girls, you know, I like all these things. Where am I going to find a job? What am I going to do? But then I finally just knew, because they were watching me, I had to get out of there. But once I forgave myself, you kind of see things differently, because when you're forgiving that other person, you're not condoning the act. You're not saying, okay, you're off the hook. What you're doing is you're releasing that energy, those hooks that are in you from what they've done. And you're just letting it either transmute or go back to that person. And once I did that, Sabrina, my life changed tremendously.
I love this visual that you're giving us of releasing the hooks. I can actually visualize that, you know, actually releasing them and just letting it go.
And that's what you have to do, you know. And I oftentimes when I talk to people about forgiveness, and there will be people that say they don't deserve forgiveness or they have to earn it. And my answer to that is, if that person hurt you that badly, they didn't care. And you're probably going to be waiting forever, and you're not going to get an apology. You're not going to even, some men won't even acknowledge it. And I'm not talking about just men do that, because women, you know, do it too.
Yeah.
But you're releasing it for yourself. This is about no one but you. And that was a 360 for me. And when I started just releasing it, and, you know, sometimes I'd feel like my gut get really tight, and I'm like, there's something coming in there. So I would meditate and deep breathe. And when you release it with sound, you know, you're shifting it. You've got the vibration of sound in there because you're releasing it. And it took a while. I'm not going to say it's overnight. And finally, I just started letting go, because I didn't want to carry the burden he placed inside of me. So that's how I started doing it.
Totally. Yeah, it's kind of bringing me back to what you kind of opened with, where you were talking about your story all the time, just over and over again, with the counselor, with the group sessions. And you're kind of like reliving it. You're kind of like playing it over and over again. You're still in that state of mind. It's really hard to forgive when you're in that constant state of just recycling it over. You almost get like more mad sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And and then you're in there with some women who are never going to get over it, who are going to
Yeah,
carry their anger around forever. And see, that's a low vibration.
it
It's a
is.
very low vibration, and vibration can be felt and transferred. So to me, it was very important to get to release, forgive, and raise my vibration as to not sink back into that lower dimensional frequency of anger and pain and hate. And when you do that, that all those words that I just said, those are low vibrational words that are stuck inside you. You can release those and replace them with love and joy and happiness. What happens is those higher vibrational words will help vibrate those old feelings out, those old words out. And it's just like another release.
Yes. Yes. We could take this in so many different directions. I do want to touch really fast before we kind of pivot here on groups and what we said about reiterating your story. Yes. And talking a little bit about how many times, not all, right, groups are usually like led by somebody, but even if you're with your girlfriends, right, and you're telling a story, but you're telling it over and over again, a lot of times our girlfriends want to take our side, so they refuel it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And especially if you're out like on a girls' night where you had a few cocktails, let's say, and it really got to a point, and I didn't know this at the time, but none of my girlfriends really cared for him. But then, you sit there and you're like, well, why didn't you guys say something? Well, because we love you. And so it served no purpose in terms of making me feel better, or, I get you're siding with me, but you knew he was bad all along. No one mentioned certain things to me. They wanted to protect me, which I admire. But, sometimes it just comes to a point where words are ineffective. You have to stand up and take action is what you have to do.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to kind of hover a little bit as far as physical ailments. I don't think that a lot of times we realize that there are actual physical things, you mentioned that happen to your body when you are in a state of not forgiving. Can we touch on that a little bit?
I would love to touch on that. And I do have a story connected with this as well. And when you think of disease and you break that word down, it's dis-ease. So when you've got so much anger and darkness and animosity within you, it just churns. You're in fight or flight all the time. You're so angry that you just sometimes shake, or, you cry, or you scream, or you yell. And all of those can be very positive things under certain circumstances. But if you're not dealing with it, it's very, very negative. And the way I learned this is my mom passed away in 2015. And she had breast cancer. We found it when it was stage 4, so we knew she wasn't going to make it. And I'm going to say about 5 days before she died, she turned to me and she said 2 things. One was, they threw rocks at me. And I said, Mom, what are you talking about? She goes, they threw rocks at me. I said, who? And I kind of thought maybe she's going in and out, she says in 3rd grade, when I walked to school, they threw rocks at me. So she'd carried that shame with her. She was 75 when she died. So she carried it from the time she was maybe 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
Another thing she says is, he slept with all my friends. And I said, and I had known that my dad, had cheated. And she had always said, I forgave him. I've forgiven him all the time. But can you imagine that that's the thing you're taking with you on your journey out of here? So she had never forgiven him. She had those 2 things that were still inside of her that many years later. And the worst thing that can happen is a husband cheating on you because you think, I'm not worthy. He doesn't want me. He wants someone else. You question your femininity. So it's breast cancer is a very feminine disease. And so that ate at her whole life. until
Wow.
she actually died with that pain. And when it was my epiphany. It was an epiphany for me that I will not let this man take my life.
Mm.
And maybe that was her gift to me
Wow.
in terms of that. I mean, I was working on myself, but when that happened, Sabrina, I was like, oh no, that will not happen to me. Will
Wow.
not.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So yes, you can get sick from
Yeah.
holding in those disruptive, those angers, anything like that. And I always say, as within, so without. Whatever
Mm.
you're thinking, feeling, how you're acting, everything that's going on inside of you eventually will come out, whether it be good or bad. And so that was another lesson, that I need to free myself from all of this and really do a 360 on my life.
Absolutely. So you mentioned your husband, you mentioned your daughter. Your daughter was kind of intertwined in this. And I know just from my own personal thought process, like to forgive, but when a child is also involved, it's a
Well,
different level of forgiveness. So I think that you're a right person to ask this question too. Um, but what is a step? I mean, there are so many people that are sitting in this dark, dingy state of mind, whether it's continuous, right? Some people, you meet them and there's vomiting all over the place, all the people that have wronged them. And then other people, it's more of a casual conversation, but you can see they're still holding on to that stuff. What should somebody start to do? How can somebody start to forgive?
I think the one thing you must understand for forgiveness is that it's for you.
Hmm.
You have to understand whatever that person did to you, said to you, or how they treated you is never about you. It's about how they feel inside of them. And I can attest to, my ex had a lot of trauma, a lot of turmoil. Not that he even knows it to this day. But when I learned those two things, whatever he did or said to me, it's not about him. It's about his insecurities, what he needs to make him feel good. And then I understood that forgiveness is going to be for me. Then, and I'm not saying it's overnight. It is a process. It is an
Yeah.
absolute process. But you just start saying to yourself, you can start doing your affirmations. I'm worthy. I'm good. I didn't deserve this. This was not about me. So you can start with some self-talk, and you can look at the mirror and face yourself, because sometimes that's things that we don't think about doing, is looking at us, especially if we have kids and a marriage and a life that, is kind of dominated by kids at that point. Mom always kind of takes back seat in a way.
Hmm.
And when you start thinking about, I deserve kindness, I deserve love, I deserve to be taken care of, you can kind of do that self-talk and maybe start just doing a little bit of self-care. And then you think to yourself, you know what? Self-care is self-love. And
Hmm.
it's just kind of a process. And I kind of had to talk myself into it. Not that I thought I didn't deserve it, but I think I was so conditioned to just always take care, of my girls or the family or whatever. Everybody came first and I came last. And then I realized that I'm not taking care of things as well as I should, because I'm not taking care of me.
Yeah.
And so that's where everything kind of started, and loving myself and forgiving him. I can't fix him. I can't fix his problems. I had to work through mine. If he so chooses, he'll have to work through his someday.
Yeah.
But I would say that's the first place to start, is with you. Go inside of you.
Yeah.
Go inside and see what still remains of that person that you remember from maybe before marriage or before kids. What did
Hmm.
she like? What was she good at? What would she like to do with herself? And just open a conversation with yourself and talk to your body. Your body will answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you're talking about the mirror. I kind of forgot, but I did the mirror exercise where I'm talking to myself when I first left my ex. or an ex that was a very toxic relationship. And I remember, oh my gosh, when I first started what you're saying, where you're like, say affirmations in the mirror and actually say it to yourself, I couldn't even mouth the words
Ooh.
without bawling my eyes out. Like I couldn't even mouth, like, you're smart.
Mhm.
Even just to mouth it, like to say it staring at myself, I could not. So I'm like, let me just mouth it. And even mouthing it would just bring me to tears. That's
Mhm.
how broken I was. And when I first tried it the first time, I'm like, this is dumb. Like, this is such a waste of time. But when I saw how such a simple statement, like I am smart, could not even be mouthed, I was like, oh, this is powerful.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is
And you're rewiring your brain. You know, someone took that from you and made you feel less or
yeah.
made you feel underneath them. And, you know, just those tiny little things you're rewiring.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things I remember is, gosh, people used to think how funny you were. You're not funny anymore. But I wasn't funny because I wasn't having fun. So
Yeah.
just when you start looking at yourself, and it can take you back to a few bad things, and then you just, counter that with, well, but I'm this, I'm that. And it is hard at first. It's hard at first because, you're like, okay, I'm making eye contact with me. This is really uncomfortable.
Yes. 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 A great advice, and something so simple that we can all do in our homes
Yes.
to really start working on that self-love and that forgiveness.
Absolutely. And I mean, I look at the money I spent on everything, and I don't bemoan that because I'm glad I went through all that. I know how to do it and I can help others with it. But forgiveness can be free. It can. If you watch this and you hear these certain things you can do, and like I said, not overnight, but start slow. Just start slow. And maybe go get a manicure if you don't take care of it. Just something for you. You're
Yeah.
important. You deserve it.
Yeah. Definitely. Great insight. You had mentioned earlier in the podcast low vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And although I know what that means, I would love for you to explain in a little more depth to those that maybe don't know, and discuss low vibration and high vibration. What are they? What is it? And what's the difference?
Okay. We all vibrate. We are just we're just vibrating all the time. And when I talk about a third dimensional existence in the terms of vibration, and I'm just going to tell you how I know that. It's a very low vibrational frequency in terms of you still exist with an ego. So you've got this false sense of maybe pride, maybe smart. We all know what an ego is. It supposedly keeps us safe. And a lot of times what will happen is we have a tendency to judge. We have a tendency to want to argue. We want to disagree. We want to shut people down. We want to humiliate them to feel better about ourselves. So that's going to be a very low vibrational frequency. And one thing I do want to point out is drinking. Drinking will lower your vibration quicker than anything. And I stopped many years ago because that's what you do. You go out and have a couple drinks with your girlfriend. And when I started raising mine, I can't tolerate it anymore. But it's alcohol is an old Arabic name, akul. And it's called that is a flesh eating spirit. So you know how some people drink so much they black out? Their soul just leaves and something steps in and they do things they don't usually do. So that's a very low vibrational third dimensional existence, thinking that you have to validate yourself without drinking, with the big fancy car, the big fancy house. So then if you can start yourself on this process of forgiveness and healing, where you're healing yourself and you're releasing trauma, you're raising your vibration. And what happens is you step into a fifth dimensional existence. And what that means is you don't want to work from the ego anymore. You don't want to judge. You understand that everybody has an opinion, and that's okay because that's theirs. You start understanding that you're going to validate yourself on the inside, not externally. That car isn't going to make you a good person. That big house isn't going to make you any more likable. So instead of the ego, you're going into the heart. And when you can get yourself into that heart center and start, your heart is your truth center. Your heart and your gut are your truth centers. And what you want to do is everything you ever need is inside of you and can be found. So that's when you're really raising your vibration to understand that we're equal and everyone's important. And everyone has an opinion. And it's not a slur against you. It's just theirs. They get to have it. We don't judge.
You said everything you ever need is inside of you. What does that mean?
Every answer to every question you have. Health questions, you can find out what you need to eat, what you need to take for vitamins, and that's very, very simple. You can find out if you need to eat meat, and your hands are extensions of your heart, which is your true center. For instance, if you think, well, I need some magnesium, you just take that bottle and you hold it in your hand. If your body goes back, it's no. If your body moves, and this is slight. This isn't like falling over. Your body will move towards it. You need it. Hold alcohol in your hand and see what your body does. It will always go back. You never need that. But food, fruits, vegetables, everything. Anything. You're really going to be interested in finding out about pharmaceuticals because they're all synthetic. And so those are really tough on the body. Yet, can they be life-saving? Yes, they can, but they are synthetic. I always move towards herbs. But everything is inside. And if you ask your body, it will tell you, but you have to be still enough to listen. Bless you.
Thank you. When you say your body moves towards or away, what does that actually look like?
Let's
you
see.
can put a big steak right in front of me on a plate.
I always just hold something in my hand.
Okay.
And it's the slightest. It's not like it's going to catapult you to your knees or anything, but it's just the slightest movement. It's kinesiology. That's how they do muscle testing. And chiropractors do it. Some doctors do it. Naturopaths do it. And I just learned, what they do is they'd have you put it in one hand and then you'd hold your arm out straight. And if your arm goes down, that's a no. If you can hold it steady, that's a yes. So if you want to have someone do it with you that way, that's a way you can do it. But to me, it's just if I hold it and kind of slightly go towards it, that's a yes.
That's so interesting. This is reminding me of a video I saw with Oprah, who was doing, I don't know if he was a hypnotist or what he was, but he was having her hold a pendulum and asking questions. And like one way meant yes and one way meant no, like side to side meant one thing. And then like a circle meant another thing.
Yeah.
And she was like not moving her hand. Like the video camera was right on her hand. And according to the question, unconsciously, like with what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, ask me a question.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Can you see my hand? Can you see the pendulum at all?
I already know what question I would ask you.
Okay, ask it.
It's very invasive, though. Are you being for real?
Yeah.
Okay, what's yes and what's no?
Back and forth is no. A circle is yes.
Okay, have you forgiven your husband?
I have not. And you know what's interesting about that?
Okay.
It's only come up in about the last 10 days. I've got some anger in my root. And it's so funny because with the eclipse, it stirred up a bunch of old energy. One was from when I was 15 years old. But a lot of the stuff, I haven't forgiven him totally, but a part of it was angry at myself. I was angry at myself.
Wow.
Yeah. I was angry at myself for putting up with so much for so long. And what I did is I shut my throat chakra down. And so it's interesting that you asked that, because just literally like in the last probably 6-7 days, the anger has surfaced to where I'll be walking around and I am like pissed. I'm like, okay, what is this? And so I had to meditate and I had to get to it. And it's something something that happened when I was 15. And another thing was my ex, because like sometimes my daughters will be talking about it and I'll hear something and it's like a trigger. And I'm like, you haven't cleared. You need to clear yourself.
Yes.
So that's truth.
Wow. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable in that space. And I totally get that. I just had a scenario, I won't get into it, but I had a scenario where I thought I had forgiven, and was talking about it on a podcast.
Mhm.
No, was talking about it on a networking call with a woman. I actually discussed it on a podcast, like the whole scenario, but I was on a networking call with a woman and the subject came up and I started bawling
Oh.
in front of this stranger.
Oh, wow.
The same thing you're saying, where I was like mad at myself, for the situation. But I was telling her, I'm like, this is so weird because I walk around saying I am fully good. Like I have no hard feelings whatsoever. And then just out of the blue, like what you're saying, years later, this just came up. This just happened, same as you, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so interesting. It's a journey.
It's a journey. And I know it'll be my whole life, but the energies are so strong right now in terms of ascension symptoms. Everybody's rising up. The earth is actually changing, physically changing. Some of us are going with her, others are not. But we have to, what we're going through is a carbon-based body, because that was our denser. We're now becoming crystalline. Crystalline doesn't like to hold those old energies and frequencies. So with the new moons, full moons, that crazy eclipse, it just all surfaced.
Wow.
And I've gotten rid of some of it, but every once in a while I'll be like, now there's something in there. I got to go find that and get rid of it.
I love it. I love it. I love the authenticity and all of that. And what a great testament to the lifelong journey of healing.
Always.
Lifelong journey
Always.
of healing. I love this. I took so many notes. I certainly hope that you watching live or on the replay also took a ton of notes. We have a ton of people still hanging out 30 minutes in watching live. Thank you so much for being here. If you're on the replay and you've made it this far, thank you. Nicole, I would love for you to talk a little bit about exactly what you do, exactly who you help, who should be reaching out to you.
I work a lot with women because we tend to hold more of our emotions inside, and we've kind of been conditioned not to talk about anything. But what I do is I finally figured out like these 4 steps that you need to take to really heal yourself. And the first one, of course, is forgiveness. And what we do, if it's buried deep inside of you, we go find it and we clear it. And clearing can be, it can be tears. It can be, I've had people get sick. I've had them throw up. But you're physically releasing it. I mean, you can say all day long, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. And then you get on a show like this and you're like, well, I haven't quite forgiven yet. You caught me, but I knew things were coming up for me. So the first thing is forgiveness. And you are the most important person to forgive. Okay. After we accomplish that for you, we go into the quantum journey of finding traumas. And I unfortunately have a lot of sexual trauma with women, but it can be something just as simple as something that, your mom said, oh God, you look horrible that day. I mean, it can be just a statement. You never know what your cellular memory is going to capture. So sometimes we can find it in a few visits. Other times, I've been working with someone for months and we're still just in the talking phases. So she can get that out. We haven't gone in to find the emotional triggers. So it's all across the board. It depends on you. once you find those traumas and release them, then what you start doing is you start stepping in out of that third dimensional frequency. You're going to start taking your ego off. You're going to start thinking about things. You're going to start using different language in terms of positivity instead of negativity. The positivity is going to literally vibrate the old out of you. And then you're going to step into that fifth dimensional frequency. And that is a place, I'm going to just use the word bliss. And I know that sounds like out there, but I've been doing this a long time, obviously. And some mornings I always wake up and I'm like, I wish people could wake up like me, happy and in gratitude. And even if something goes wrong, just understand that, like you said, we're a work in progress. We are healing till the end of our life.
Yeah.
And it's just such a different existence. And people always talk about, well, you've got to have that ego to keep people away, or if they say something to you. The beauty of raising your frequency is that because and I'm not putting it down. I've been there. It's just that you're vibrating lower and we're up here a little bit and we don't meet. So it's like an organic where people you maybe have been friends with before, you don't quite have as much in common, and you're finding your tribe of different people. And the lower vibrational people, I just tell people we're kind of invisible to them. They don't bother us. They won't say anything. I said, they just don't see us. I said, and that works for me. So it is kind of a 4-step process. And, the first 2 are the most important, because once you can get rid of your, start working on your forgiveness, get rid of your trauma, then the other kind of happens organically. And then there's a lot of spirituality in being in a 5th dimensional existence. And that probably is another show, because you talk about your third eye and astral travel and, just all kinds of things. You are unlimited in this earth life once you understand your power.
Wow. Fantastic. Where can people find you? Social? Where do you hang out?
You know what? After this, I'm going to go hang out on the beach. But I made everything so easy. I just put everything in my name. So if I'm on Facebook, Nicole Harvick, Instagram, Nicole Harvick, TikTok, Nicole Harvick, and then also LinkedIn, I'm on everything. You can find me there, NicoleHarvick.com for my website. It's almost done. There's a few things, but you can get the gist of who I am and what I do. So.
Beautiful. Well, this has been fantastic. I so appreciate you being here, sharing so much amazing information. So appreciate it. Love the storytelling. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
I think for me, a closing thought for anybody that's out there listening and trying to understand all this is that you are worth forgiveness. You are worth it. We are such amazing people. Women are amazing. I'm just going to say it. We're resilient. We're kind. We stand up and we get it done. And so if you're going through all these things of not being worthy, that's conditioning from somewhere. That whether it started, with your parents, whether it started in school, whether it culminated with your husband, I don't care where it is, we find it, we pull it out, and you get to be that swan you were meant to be. I mean, I've got people that are just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you helped me with that. And I do help men too. They don't talk about it as much, but they have trauma as well.
Yeah.
So just know that you are worthy. You are so worth loving yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us and sharing so much amazing information with us. That brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. To our dedicated listeners, if you made it all the way here, thank you. Make sure you follow, like, and share. Once again, I am Sabrina Victoria. I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to lift each other up every step of the way by sharing stories and information just like this.